Hello everyone, John Maher here. It's Thursday, the 11th of December 2025, and this is your weekly Grass10 grazing management update on the dairy edge. I suppose when we look at the figures for this week, they have come out better than we would have expected, which is good to see. This is the final, podcast of the year. But before I begin, a special thank you to all the future farmers who contributed over 2025. People and the rest of the people that work with me would have been onto these farmers to make their contribution, on the previous week to be ready for the following Tuesday. They often walk the farms the weekends to have their figures up to date. I just want to thank them all for the contributions during the year, which was, for most people, a good grazing year. So back to where we're at now on the first week of December 2025. The average farm cover from the PBI data in early December 2025 is 736. Which is a superb average now, to be honest. It's right where we would want to be, and on average leaves us in a very good place for spring 2026. Now, part of the reason why the figure is so good, and we had concerns going back in November due to, I suppose, people not building enough cover and grazing longer, but the average growth for the last week was about 10 kilos of dry matter per hectare per day. So, which is about double the average. And I suppose you go back to 2 previous weeks, that would be a similar trend. So it's enabled people to catch up a bit on average farm cover and put us in a good place, in early December. When we look more in depth at the data from pasture base, the bottom 25% of farms have an average farm cover of about 490, which leaves them in and not a great position now heading into the winter. I don't know what their growth rate over the winter will be. We normally budget off 4. There's some will grow 3, some will grow 5 by the coast, I suppose. But look, 4 is where we would be at. But with an average farm cover below 500 on the 10th of December or thereabouts, there's a lot of catch up there. On the other hand, 50% of farms on the PBI database this week have an average farm cover over 750. So on average, we're good, but there are those who are a little bit behind, I suppose, when we look at things from the point of view of heading into spring 2026 now. I think the first thing we'll do that the farmers who haven't completed a final walk should really do so this week. When we look at some of the data coming back, we know some are short on a bit on grass, and we know that some are short on fodder. And if you're short on both grass and fodder, then, this will determine some on-farm decisions. Where grass supply is low and feed supply is low, things need to be thought about, I suppose, and actions put in place. As a guide, then, like a livestock unit or eats about a bale and a half a month. I would expect a dairy cow would eat a bit more than that. But anyway, that's a kind of a guide for people, or a ton and a half of silage a month. So it's kind of important to take stock of where we're at now. If we look towards spring 2026 then, and what we want to look at, right, I suppose the average dairy farm for us now, when we look at the data, needs about a ton of dry matter per hectare on the 1st of February 2026. We used to say about 900, but because cows are eating more, because calving is more compact, we need a little bit extra. If we assume an average growth rate, which is about 4 kilos for the last 5 years. I accept it wasn't that last year. It was closer. It was about 3.5, but kilos of dry matter per hectare per day. But we work off 4, I suppose, during December and January. That means if we do 4 over 60 days and we look at the figures, then, the 736 turns close into 1,000 for the 1st of February. There are farms who will be higher stocked than what I've outlined, that are probably calving in January and have a high calving rate, and they would require a higher opening farm cover, which is fine for me to say now. That's not often easily carried and needs a bit of planning. But the grass demand is high in the spring, given the way things have evolved over the last number of years between, better genetics, higher calving rate, earlier calving. So just keep that in mind, I suppose. So if we have 1,000 on average on the 1st of February, we will be very happy on our side anyway. Right, back to the year 2025, the grazing year in review. On average over the country, 2025 would be classed as a very good grass growing year. And at the moment, we're running about 13.2 tons of dry matter per hectare grown year to date on pasture base, right? So I suppose that tells us that pasture production was up significantly by about a ton on the 5-year average. Do you know, if I go back to the last few years, like we didn't cross 12 tons. But look, going back to years before that, then things weren't as bad. But anyway, We're about a ton up on the 5-year average, yeah. I suppose it's fine for me to say that from a country perspective. There are many farms in the likes of Waterford, Wexford, I suppose, East Cork, North Cork, South Tip, South Kilkenny, who will be back about a ton and a half, 2 ton of dry matter on that figure now. I have to say that because they suffered levels of drought, not once, not twice, but 3 times in different capacities. And it did affect pasture production for the farm. We got a great spring. It gave us a great start. When you look at all the numbers for cow performance, live weight gains and cattle, all that, they're all well up. That was a good spring. So everything started well for the country, but, in the mid-season, some ran into troubles with low growth rates, all right. But irrespective of that, everyone should kind of review their pasture production for 2025. The annual tonnage report there is on pasture base on the menu on the left-hand side. The one I generally look at is the farm summary report for PBI, just more than just the grass production side. I suppose you need both, but this would identify then, particularly the annual tonnage report, would identify the poorest performing paddocks on the farm. When you are reviewing, the soil fertility piece, the clover content piece, the grazing infrastructure piece should come into your decision making as to which fields you target, don't target, for reseeding. Because it's just not all about tonnage. There are maybe other issues that need to be fixed first, like soil fertility, for example. If your pH is low or you're short of P or K, those things should be tackled first or jointly. Right. So I suppose before I finish up on this year's podcast, I want to thank a lot of people who make the Grass10 newsletter happen every week. There are quite a lot now. There's the Grass and Science Department in Teagasc who do an awful lot for this podcast and the Grass10 newsletter. Obviously, the pasture-based team who supplied the data every week. Lastcast Media who helped me do this podcast, and I'll thank them for their patience. The Dairy Edge team as well, who also helped me out. So just to recognise those. The research farms around the country in Teagasc, Ballyhaise, Athenry, Clonakilty, Moore Park, Johnson Castle, Grange, Oak Park, they all give us contributions for the dry matters each week, which just help with all things grazing and doing calculations and things like that. The Teagasc PR team, who also help out, as I mentioned earlier, the feature farmers, who probably have to do a nice bit to try and keep me and the rest of the Grass team happy. And finally, our own people in the Grass10 team who do this podcast with myself throughout the year. So just thank all those and just to recognise their contribution. And I suppose finally I want to wish all the podcast listeners a happy Christmas and even better grazing year in 2026. So, if you'd like to hear more from the Grass10 team, subscribe to the weekly Grass10 newsletter, which is available on the Grass10 page of the Teagasc public website. And the link to newsletter is also available in the description of this podcast. We'd like to thank all those who support the Grass10 campaign, which are AIB, Grass and Agro, Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine, FBD and the Farmers Journal. This has been your Grass10 update. Best of luck.